Hi, my name is Ruby. If you are new to this channel, I am a psychic, tarot reader, archetypal astrologer, sound healer, Mary Magdalene priestess. And today we are going to be talking about reclaiming your sexual empowerment and your sexual sovereignty as a woman, as a feminine being. So if you're interested in the divine feminine, divination, priestesshood, all of these beautiful topics, please subscribe to the channel. Give this video a like if you enjoyed it. It lets me know what content that you are liking and wanting more of. So before I dive into this topic today, I just want to say I am a cis woman, and I'm going to be talking about the womb space and womb healing. However, this is a conversation that I do not mean to be exclusionary around. So if you are a woman and you don't have a physical womb, you have an energetic womb, you can still use what I'm talking about today for your healing. It will just look a little different. And that, I'm a cis woman, and the healing I've done has been from the distorted and unhealed masculine. So I'm talking about my personal experience, but I don't mean to exclude anyone from the conversation. And you can use this healing no matter how you identify, okay? So I want to talk about why it's important as women, as feminine beings, that we do this work of reclaiming our sexual power. And then I'm going to give you some tools and some resources and some books. So this is going to be a brief introduction on this topic, and I'm feeling very called to start talking about this more, because I think as women, I think as feminine beings, it is our work on this planet to reclaim our sexual power and our sexual sovereignty. It's been taken from us by mass culture. One of, I think, the most insidious traumas of the society and the patriarchy that we currently live in and have been indoctrinated into is that it takes away our sexual connection as women. From the moment we are born, female sexuality is degraded, and it is commodified and objectified and shamed. And so even if we don't grow up in a household that throws these beliefs at us, we're still inundated from them by society. And so you could have the most amazing, beautiful, woke parents, and society is still telling you that female sexuality is disgusting and it's degrading and it's for male pleasure. And so regardless of our upbringing, regardless of any personal trauma that has happened to us, this is still important work for us to do. Now, I was raised in a very authoritarian evangelical cult. So I was raised within purity culture. And purity culture essentially says that women's sexuality belongs to men. That it's disgusting and gross unless it's in a very specific container of one type of way. And so I was always taught that my sexuality belonged to my father until I was married, and then it belonged to my husband. And so it never belonged to me. And the most disgusting, worst thing that I could do, I was taught growing up, was to have sex outside of marriage, because that was my gift for my husband. And so there's a real shame and disgust towards women that are overtly sexual or owning their sexuality and embodying their sexuality, because it's not theirs, it's for men. So that was what I was raised in, and I always knew it was disgusting and it was wrong. And these are beliefs I was indoctrinated into from a very early age. And I would specifically sit in church services where this was being taught, and as an intuitive and a psychic, I would start to feel sick to my stomach, and sometimes I would have to leave. My body was rejecting these teachings. but I had to abide by them because of the environment I grew up in. So when I was 18, 19, and I left that authoritarian religious environment, I was ready to reject those beliefs, but I also just had all of this unhealed wounding around my sexuality. So I instead just was really open, and I had a hard time saying no. And if men wanted to be in relationship with me and have sex with me, they could. It was like I became just as disempowered in another way. Like, I didn't believe that I needed to save myself for marriage, but I still believed that I didn't belong to myself. And so I think what's so disturbing about purity culture is when people leave purity culture, they often are just like rife and ready to be taken advantage of by men, like, feminine beings, women are, because it's been indoctrinated in them so deeply that their sexuality doesn't belong to them, that is the inner belief that stays even when they've rejected the surface belief of only have sex with your husband after you're married. I hope that this is tracking and this is making sense. I didn't plan on anything I was going to say today. I'm just kind of letting the channel open, and what needs to be said, I'm trusting will be said. I really feel like there's people that need to hear this, and I really feel like this is a message that is really wanting to be spoken. So, within my 20s, I was very sexually disempowered in a couple ways. The first was I didn't have a lot of boundaries or standards for how I was going to be treated by men. And it wasn't like I was really open. In fact, I was really closed off. But I think that men could sense that I wasn't sovereign. And so I could be easily taken advantage of. And then the other real area of healing for me was that just sexuality, my sexuality was so shamed, and there was so much projection placed upon it from an early age that I was really disassociated from my own body and my own pleasure. And I didn't even have an orgasm until I was in my late 20s, and I'm 32 now. So I was so disassociated and so disgusted by my own sexuality that I couldn't even really experience pleasure in my body. And I also knew that I was a very sexual being, because those of us that are on a divine feminine path and are really connected to divine feminine energy, we're usually pretty sexual beings. That's how we move energy. That's how we heal. That's how we alchemize. And so I was really disconnected and disassociated from one of my healing pathways. So I went through a separation from a person I was married to in 2019. And sometimes my timeline gets wonky. And 4 or 5 years ago, I guess you could say, and I really started this path of reclaiming my sexual sovereignty. And first, this was just me dismantling a lot of the conditioning and shame I had around my own sexuality. And this all happened in conjunction to really coming into a path of devotion to Mary Magdalene. So, I'm talking about this really because of my connection with Mary Magdalene. A huge component of the Magdalene pathway is reclaiming our sexual sovereignty, reclaiming our sexual empowerment, and our womb healing, our womb space. So when I started working with Mary Magdalene, I started this work. And there's all of these energetic exercises that I did in the books that I'm about to share with you that helped me clear energetic trauma from my womb space. Because what happened is that when I was in my early 20s, I was really taken advantage of by men, and by the men that I dated, the men I had encounters with. And even in instances where it wasn't assault, energetically, I wasn't open. And so there was real energetic debris around my womb. And as women, when we are not met in reverence by the masculine, if we are feminine beings, feminine identifying people, and we are in relationship with men, and those men, even if they're on the surface, they are fine, like there's no red flags. If they're engaging in certain types of pornography, if they have deep-seated misogyny that they haven't worked through, and we let them in our womb, that's gonna be there. And so even if we haven't had any overt traumatic experiences, the mass conditioning around female sexuality is oppressive and traumatic. Please listen to me. So men who, one of my lights just turned off. That means the message is really good. I hope you can still see me okay. So if you are somebody who just lives in this society and has engaged in dating and sexuality the ways that society has conditioned you to, you have trauma in your womb if you are a feminine being. And so clearing that trauma was really helpful for me. And then in full transparency, I went a little too far in this direction of sexual freedom and liberation. And so for a while, I was really public and open as a sexual being. And that was part of my path. It was part of my learning experience. I really feel like I'm on this planet to learn everything the hard way so then I can teach everybody else and it's easier for everyone else. And this is definitely one of those avenues. Because I became really public with my sexuality. I was making erotic art, and I was really involved in the neo-tantric community. And this was part of my path because I had to realize and understand that even in spiritual spaces that are based on healing, there is still this aspect of men using those spaces to be predatory towards women. And so I no longer engage in a lot of neo-tantric spiritual kink spaces because they're still just full of men who want to harvest and oppress and be in an equal relationship with feminine energy, because feminine sexual energy is so healing to the masculine, and men in our society are so socialized to engage with it in a way that is unhealthy and toxic to the feminine. And this is a way that the patriarchy oppresses both of us. You know, when I'm talking about how unhealthy and how harmful and how evil the patriarchy is, it's not because I hate men. Quite the opposite. Men are victimized by the patriarchy just as much as women are. And men need their feminine energy too. And so the patriarchy, what it does is it strips all of us from our feminine empowerment. It strips all of us from our feminine connection. And men need it too. But I am a cis woman talking about my experience. So I'm talking right now to feminine beings. And so that's what I'm focusing on today. And so I took a step back from being so open with my sexuality because I just realized it was another way in which I was engaging in mass conditioning, because I wasn't being engaged with in a way energetically that I felt was of my highest good. But it was part of my path. And I pulled away from those communities because I felt like there was a lot of distortion in them, and that there was still a lot of there was ways in which the feminine was being taken advantage of in those spaces, even though it was very covert, and there was a lot of language used to I guess cover that up. And I mean, like, in some of the spaces that I was in, like, male leadership could sleep with female students. And I saw, like, women being just, like, having these Kundalini experiences where they were like really uncovering their sexual trauma, and then like that night in temple, male facilitators trying to sleep with those women, and I was like, this is not right spiritually, this is not right energetically. So that's why I want to talk about this too, because, you know, when I started this path of sacred sexuality and womb healing, I was really hungry for information. And so, you know, I went into these spaces, and now I wouldn't encourage women to go into these spaces until they've done a lot of this own work on their own, a lot of this healing on their own, so that when they are in those spaces, if they decide to go into them, they are already sovereign, their boundaries are already really ironclad, and they're not going to be taken advantage of by the predators in those circles who have disguised themselves as spiritual men, spiritual teachers, sexual healers. So now I'm going to talk about some of the books that helped me on this journey, and how I continue this in my own life. And womb healing and womb magic is actually something that came up for me really strongly recently as something that I need to incorporate back into my practice. I took a break from really engaging with this stuff heavily, just because I think sometimes we need to take breaks to integrate. Like, I take breaks from everything. But Spirit has really strongly impressed upon my heart to start engaging in these practices myself, and to start talking about this a lot more, because we so desperately need this healing in our planet. And I want to give this healing to women in a way that is not going to be compromised by ways in which, even in healing communities, there's still distortion around. Okay, so the first book I'm going to recommend to you, if you can only buy one book, buy this one. It is Womb Awakening by Azra and Seren, Bertrand. If you watched my video on books, my favorite books about Mary Magdalene, they wrote the book Magdalene Mysteries. This is their first book. And this book is freaking amazing. And this book has Magdalene's Wild Womb. This book has Magdalene medicine, Magdalene magic in it. So if you are connected to Mary Magdalene and you feel called to this path, this is going to be great for you, but you don't have to be connected to Mary Magdalene to engage in this book. And this book teaches you, you know, I don't really agree with every single thing in this book, but a lot of the information is good. And so, as always, you know, have your own discernment meter on, metabolize everything through your own internal guidance. But this book really teaches you about how holy your womb is, how sacred your womb is. You are going to finish this book and you are going to have a whole new relationship with your body, a whole new appreciation for your energetic womb space. And this book also has exercises on how to clear your womb and how to align your womb. And so I think I'm going to be rereading this book. If you pick this book up, let me know. We can have a little book circle. We can talk about it. So this book is amazing. Start with this book. This book is one of my Bibles. Now, all of these books are going to have very heteronormative language. They are going to be talking to you like you are a cis woman. So if you're like trans or you're non-binary, like just protect yourself if that stuff is triggering for you. But if you are trans or non-binary, or you identify in a way that is not presented in this book, I still think this information is good. And so just if it's safe for you to do so, like still partake and modify the information to fit your specific circumstance. So the second book I'm going to talk about, I also had in my books on Mary Magdalene video. And this is the Magdalene Manuscript by Tom Kenyon, channeled by Tom Kenyon. And this is material that came through from Mary Magdalene. And this book is going to give you, again, exercises on cultivating sexual energy that will help you clear your womb space. Now, these exercises you can do alone. And even in the book, they suggest before even bringing this to a partner, do it with yourself. I think a lot of us feel like sex magic is something we need a partner to do. I have never done it with a partner. And I would be very, very, very picky about engaging in it with a partner, because you really want to be engaging in these practices with a person that is really energetically aligned and is high frequency, because you are going to be sharing a very intimate container with them and transference can occur. So I would definitely begin using these practices for yourself. So this is meditative practices that you can do, visualizations you can do, energy medicine practices you can do, cultivating your own Shakti, your own Kundalini, and these practices are very clearing. They'll help you clear through some of those energetic imprints in your womb space, in your sacral chakra. The next book I'm going to talk about is Wild Feminine by Tami Lynn Kent. This is an amazing book. Tami Lynn Kent is like a holistic OBGYN. And so this book is going to give you like anatomy, and it's going to give you exercises you can do for like physical reproductive womb health. And then it also has all of these like energetic exercises too. If you don't have an actual womb space, like literal, if you don't have like feminine reproductive organs, I would say skip this one, because it's really focused on like the actual anatomy. If you're a woman who's had like a hysterectomy, I don't like words. If you are no longer bleeding, this book is still for you. But I would say like have like feminine reproductive organs if you buy this one, just because it's centered around that. So the information is going to be like how to give yourself a yoni massage, how to be connected with your pelvic floor, and then it's also going to have like energetic exercises, because this is a holistic journey. So if we have womb space, if we are embodied in our womb, it's like physically, emotionally, spiritually, it's like all connected. And that's really what the path of being a Magdalene priestess is about. Mary Magdalene is all about bringing spirit into matter and seeing matter as a vessel of spirit. It's like ascension and descension meeting in the place of the heart. So we do not reject the body in this lineage. We see the body as an extension of spirit, and we treat it as such, like we treat it as a holy divine temple. Now, the last book I'm going to recommend is amazing. It's The Tao Tantric Arts for Women. And I swear, I turned this camera on and I just like can't speak anymore. I have no idea what that's about. I promise I am not usually such an inarticulate person. So Tao Tantric Arts for Women is all exercises that you can do that are, again, energetic exercises to embody you in your female sexuality, to embody you in your feminine like essence. And if you struggle to have like a really sensual relationship with your own body as a feminine being, as a woman, like this is your book. This book really helps me just feel at home in my own sensual energy and my own body. I love the practices in this book. You will have to incorporate them into your life. So just reading this book isn't enough. You're going to want to actually practice the exercises that are in here. And there's like more overtly cultivating sexual energy practices in this book. And then there's exercises in this book that are more like energetic in nature, like more like yoga poses, but you're consciously moving the energy through the channels as you do so. So this is an amazing book, The Tao Tantric Arts for Women. Now, I think that when we are first undergoing this healing, a time of celibacy is recommended. And the reason for this is not to be puritanical. It's because when you're clearing trauma from your womb, the last thing that you need is more imprinting in your womb. And I think as women, we can really associate male validation and like sexual attention as like love. And it can be an addiction it was an addiction for me. Like I was not addicted to like love or male validation. That's never really been my MO. I mean, that can occur for people, and like no judgment at all. Like we're all here to heal different things. For me, it was like I so craved intimacy, and I was like so hungry to be met intimately and be seen intimately, that I would allow people into my space that couldn't meet me in a place that was healthy for me. And I valued that connection and that intimacy more than I valued my own sovereignty and my own self-respect. And so I would be engaging with partners that like I knew deep down were not right, but I was afraid to not engage because I valued the connection more than I valued myself. It was like a false belief. And, you know, just for the sake of time, I'm not going to dive into that further, but I'm happy to speak more about this in later videos. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. So, you know, I think that a time of celibacy is important for us because it keeps our energy really clear and it puts distance between any unhealthy patterns of relating with the masculine that come from a wounded place or a disempowered place. I have found the more that I practice this, the more selective I am in who I engage with sexually. This is interesting, right? Because I think that we think, oh, you know, like a sexually empowered woman, like she's just sleeping around with everybody. And I was open to that being the end result when I started this journey. Like was so disconnected from my sexual energy. I was so disconnected from my feminine embodiment that I was open to the end result looking however it wanted to look. I tried being poly. I tried being more open. Have found that none of those ways of relating are authentic to me and are aligned with my path and my energy. But I was open, like what feels good energetically, like what feels aligned. And what feels good energetically and what feels aligned for me is being really selective with who I let into my space, not because of any shame, not because I'm giving away something to somebody that I can't get back that takes from me, but because I realize that my sexual energy is holy, it is divine, it is kundalini, it is shakti, it is my connection to source, it is the goddess, and I am not going to cast my pearls before swine. And so if I'm engaging in somebody in that way, they have an understanding that what they are receiving is sacred, and they can hold that sacredness. They can meet me there. And I'm not engaging with men who, sorry to be vulgar, but see me as a category of porn. I am not open for low vibrational, low frequency encounters with people anymore. Because this is my spiritual practice. When your sexuality becomes your devotional practice to God, watch out. You are not going to be able to engage in the same way you used to engage. And that's good. Like that is healthy for you spiritually. That is aligned for you. And yeah, you'll have less encounters. So like there's a paradigm shift, because for some of us feel like we really need those encounters. But once you move through that paradigm shift, you are going to have the most sovereignty and the most empowerment you have ever had. You know, I'm going to title this video How to Be Sexually Empowered, because really being sexually empowered is having all of your power. And, you know, the Vestal Virgin priestesses were called virgins not because they didn't have sex. Later that was imposed on them as the patriarchy crept in. It was because they were whole unto themselves. They didn't need anything outside of themselves. And so, you know, I don't think this path is a path of celibacy forever, but I think when you're just starting out, I encourage you to consider it for a time as you align your energy, you clear your energy. From there, you'll have experiences with people that later on you'll realize aren't energetically aligned, and then you have the tools to clear your energy, clear your frequency. It's not like I don't make mistakes. Like, you know, I am still on this journey myself, and I have learned the hard way what feels aligned and what doesn't feel aligned. And I share this with you to empower you to so you can skip some of the steps that I learned the hard way on this journey. But I think that this is a beautiful journey, and it's one I feel called to share more. So I'm going to end it there for now, because I just threw a lot of information at you. But if you want me to talk more about this, please reach out. You can leave a comment on this video. You can email me at rubywolfstar@gmail.com. You can send me a DM on Instagram at rubywolfstar. And as always, I am sending you love and wishing you well.